Hey, everybody. Welcome back to The Collective. We have another fantastic show for you planned out today. Very excited. We got Sarah and Steve rejoining us for an excellent discussion. We're going to be talking about belief today, but while now I am excited, before we get into anything, y'all should be doing something special too. Hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell, do all that good stuff. We get your emails in the morning or evening, perhaps, whenever we go live, but it is always every day. So, looking forward to the rest of the conversation. If y'all have any thoughts, questions, comments, anything at all, by all means, put them up in the comment section, kind of like this one, so that we can engage them. Salty Jinx says, "Good evening, all. Winterstorm, Chris, everyone else. Good to see you, Salty." Other than that, we're going to be talking about belief. So, I have a quick definition that I'm going to hit up here, and then we will get some first thoughts. So, belief. Most people define belief as inward convictions, a feeling of certainty about what something means. They are what you hold dear and are rooted deeply within. A belief is both mental and emotional. It is embedded in the mind and in the heart. Your beliefs will dictate your action. If you believe in a cause, you will fight for it. If you believe in your religion, you will live it. If you believe in others, you support and uplift them. Beliefs drive us. They are the root of all purpose and all action. And I thought that was just a really fantastic definition of it. So let's get some first thoughts. Steve, you're up. What do you think?
Yeah, I'm very glad that you opened with that because I think it speaks pretty directly to my motivation to have this talk tonight. And I feel like it's one of those careful what you wish for conversations because like I have been feeling deep in my core that this topic needs to be discussed. And now that we're here in the kind of hour leading up to this, I'm getting a little nervous myself because once we open this can, I feel like it's one that could be pretty deep for sure. And here's my motivation for it. Since Remembrance Day, like Remembrance Day holds a pretty near and dear spot in my heart. And like literally before Remembrance Day, we started seeing Christmas decorations go up. I mean, there was an aisle full of Christmas stuff at Costco. The Christmas cups were already out in Starbucks before Remembrance Day. And personally, I've always kind of taken issue with that just because my question has always been, why are we backing up the holidays earlier and earlier in the year? Okay, so that's kind of where this whole impetus started for me. Fast forward to November 13th, we've got Christmas lights going up, we've got Christmas trees going up, we've got the school that I teach in is like ready to go full tilt boogie into Christmas. And it got me pondering why this chase or this pursuit of the holiday spirit a full month and a bit before the holiday is even arriving for us. And it was like a bit of an epiphany for me because as I've been navigating the youth that I work with, but not just the youth, like my community, the people around us, the people I've been encountering mountain biking, the people I've been encountering hunting, it's just there seems to be this tremendous, I'm going to say tremendous, um, lack of belief, and that's what I've been able to distill it down to. And Peter Attia had a guest on one of his podcasts recently talking about the difference between happy feelings and happiness, like emotion versus the actual act or practice of happiness. And it really led to this amazing conversation I had with not just one, but all of my classes that I teach this semester, asking the kids, why do they believe that the holidays have begun early? And they said, because all of us are trying to feel happy. And that was like a really, and it wasn't just like a couple of kids, it was like universal. So then we had this discussion around what this guest Peter Attia had on was saying. He's saying that happy feelings are the evidence of what exists for us in our life. So if you're happy, then you shouldn't be chasing the happy feelings. You shouldn't be chasing the holiday spirit. You shouldn't be chasing anything. It should just exist for you. And the happy feelings that you acquire on the day to day are just the evidence of the happy base that you've laid down for yourself. So that's kind of where this all started for me. And then when I had the discussion with the kids, it was they really don't have anything to believe in that roots or grounds their happiness. And so that's where like when you did your opening, one of the elements of belief you talked about was having something that roots or grounds you. And that really is super relevant in the past few weeks for me. And when I got into this conversation with the kiddos, I was talking to them about their moms or dads or caregivers, whatever their setup looks like. And it's like, what do you think your parents believe in? Like, do they have something like that they truly believe in that grounds and roots them? And the kids looked at me like I had two heads.
This is a big topic. So
I
before we
know.
get too deep into it, let's get around to
Sorry.
some more first thoughts. No, it's all good. I know you. I can see how excited you are, but let's get some first thoughts. Sarah, what do you think?
Yeah, I really like this topic. I spent a lot of today just kind of being in my thoughts and about where this conversation would go, the different things that we could talk about. But what I really like about how you started this, Chance, was that, beliefs manifest in actions. And one of the recurring thoughts I had today is that our actions are a direct representation of our internal beliefs, which in turn reflect like our internal morals and that guiding compass. And I think what is really interesting about what, Steve was just saying is that, all these kids, right, they are like, they want something to be happy about. And I don't think that is unique to just the youth that, you teach, Steve. I think that at least what I see here, I think this is a more predominant, state of existence now. So many of us live in, I heard this really good quote the other day, and it was talking about how the younger generations are living in sound bites, and that their opinions are created from sound bites and minute long, like TikToks or reels. And a lot of people don't know what they personally believe in. They believe in what they're told, and they haven't had a chance to really digest and decide if that is what truly resonates with them as a person, and to essentially develop their core beliefs, because there's so much stimulus and so much input. And so they just live in this world of overstimulation and anxiety, and they grasp for that grounded feeling. Youth, adults, I don't think it is specific to any one generation or age group. I think as a culture, across the world, this is something that we're coming to.
That's interesting, Shaun. What are your first thoughts?
If this is believe, and that's belief, a lot of people are here before they actually start believe. They're looking beyond believe towards belief, but they can't exist in the now and believe in something, anything, because a lot of society is being programmed by commercial activity, by commercialism, by capitalism, we'll call it, that the moment that something is coming up, we'll call it Remembrance Day, before you get a chance to believe here, you're already being drawn into the next belief moment, which is Christmas or what have you. So before Remembrance Day hits, people are already shopping in their minds for the next belief moment. And so it's hard to believe if you're chasing belief, but believe has to occur before belief. That's my first thoughts.
Bang. This is going to be a really good conversation. Now, before I pass it around again, I just want to hit on this real quick. Lisa jumped in here and said, hello, everyone. Good to see you, Lisa. And Salty jumps in here. He says, belief can be your center of gravity or your root cause based on your values and ethos as it has been instilled in you. Or it can be the baseline for who you want to become. And I think this is kind of where you're going with this, Shaun, is that like if you're constantly striving, if you believe in something in the now that you can, you know what? I'm not even gonna get into it. Steve, let's go back to you. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, many, as my brain is kicking into overdrive here. But I really like that idea that Shaun just brought to the table, because to me, belief is something that is cultivated, right? Like it takes time to cultivate belief. And so one of the practices that I've found to be more and more useful is, and I know it's pretty catchy right now and it gets a lot of social media attention and whatnot, but the idea of mindfulness. like actually learning how to sit in a moment and take that moment in for what it is. Because I mean, emotions and feelings are very visceral. They're very at the surface. They're very tumultuous. But being able to even sit with that level of chaos for a minute, 2 minutes, 3 minutes, where the moment settles a little bit, and now you're actually present with the feeling, and then what that feeling is doing to your thoughts. And that's where I think that it does take it like being in a belief moment, as Shaun said, but having the patience and the willingness and the mindfulness to sit with it so that it can contribute or detract from what your belief is. I think the practice of that has to be something that we draw more attention to.
I totally agree. Sarah, you got any additional thoughts on this?
Yeah, I really like that comment from both the gentlemen. You know, I think to have a really strong like sense of being able to believe in whether it's, you know, yourself or a concept, you have to be present in the moment and really sit with the why behind where that belief came from.
Shaun, anything additional to add to this?
I'll use 2 case studies. They're more theoretical than they are like concrete, but I'll say this, that the collective, I believe that it's going to become great. That's my belief. So if I right now, in the now, believe that it's going to be great, it's my job to believe now to make that future reality. So I believe that we can make it great as a collective. I have to have belief that my efforts are going to get us there. Otherwise, it gets difficult. So belief is the carrot. Believe is the stick, if that makes sense. Now, the other thing that I'd like to say is my buddy Seb Lavoie hit me up with something large and in charge just the other day where he said, guess what we're doing? I've already decided. I've already signed off on it. I was like, what? Okay, let's freaking get after it then. So he'd already put my name on something because he knows me. We see eye to eye on so many things. He knew that I would say yes. So he just said yes. He just said yes for me. Hello, dear. Hi. Oh, yes, that's my wife with her marathon medal from Singapore. Yes, thank you, dear. We're just in a live chat. No big deal.
Great work.
So he already knew that I would sign off on that because he believes that our beliefs are aligned, and they are. But he has to know both existences of me. He has to know me in the now, and he has to know future Shaun. And he's patternized that over our relationship over the last 2 years, where he knows what I'm all about in the now, and he knows what I am in the future when I start smashing. So he could sign off on that without a blink of an eye, knowing that I'd be all about it for the team. And so it's not just our interpretation of ourselves and our hopes for the future as belief. It is all the people around us that get to know us through this process, whereby they can identify that they know what we believe now, and they can understand that our beliefs will be aligned in the future. I hope that makes sense.
I'm liking where this is going, and I guess the question I have, it kind of goes in line to what Steve was asking at the beginning here, where, you know, what is happening if you're, I like where we're going with this in terms of the looking for the next thing before the present is even happening. But where does that stem from? Like, what is it that there was a point in time in history where, you know, the nation, the society, we all had one goal. There was this concept, and in my mind, it's, you know, the thing that's coming up is like the American dream, right? At the end of World War II, soldiers coming home, they're like, all we want to do is have just peace. Let's all just get back to work. We'll put this aside. We're going to make this nation out friggin' standing. And then did that. So they had this belief in the American dream that it was going to take them in a certain place, and they made that happen. But where did it stop? Where did the line, like, where do we fall off the cliff at the end of that? If you get what I'm saying, Steve, what do you think?
Yeah, I want to come back to what Sarah was talking about earlier, because it's so bang on in the world that I'm immersed in on the daily, and that is like real connection, right? Like if you have a 30-second TikTok friend, or if you have somebody who clicks like on your Instagram post, or if you're living, one snap at a time, how can that develop meaningful context about a bigger vision moving forward? And Chance, you said it, like the American dream idea, right? Like, unless you and I sit, and in the 21st century, you and I can sit here and have this conversation. We could do this for 10 minutes. We could do this for 3 hours. We can do it for an hour recorded show. Like, we have the ability to have a conversation with purpose and with depth, because we have the tools to be able to connect on those levels. This 30 seconds at a time, or this insta reel moment that that so many people are thinking is connection, doesn't afford them the ability or offer them the tools or skill set to be able to have a bigger vision conversation, because it's so driven by reactionary moments. And that's what people are chasing, is the reaction. Like a double click on an Insta post is a reaction. But a DM, how many of those DMs actually get answered by people? Like, I believe on the collective, if somebody shoots you a DM, Chance, through the collective IG, you're going to take the time to read that DM and you're going to respond.
Absolutely.
And that's what creates this belief in what we're doing. For me, is that I know, like Shaun said, where we're going with this. I believe that our ideals are aligned, and that's why we're all here tonight. For a majority of folks, like the zombies you see in traffic that are like staring at their phones while they're driving, like, because like they're so unable to A, sit with what they're thinking about, and B, they don't have the network or the actual authentic relationship to be able to have a bigger vision conversation, that they just end up spinning their wheels, right?
I like that. Sarah, got any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think that is really interesting. To your point, Chance, it's like, where did we derail? And it's like, I almost think that in this pursuit of connectivity, like, we've truly become disconnected, as a culture. And what's really, I think, unique about what Shaun is talking about is, his friend Seb, or who knows him, and you guys have done all these things together. You guys have this belief and this connection and these shared goals. And I think that's one thing that's also really amazing about this podcast, is you're now collecting all of these people with one common belief to grow and shape the content of the future, to make it meaningful, to make it growth oriented, to expand the thought processes. And I think eventually, like long term, that we could see a shift where beliefs align again in different groups, and we do kind of see that. I mean, it's a little bit more polarized now, but sorry, it's kind of late. I lost my train of thought where I was going with that.
No worries. I can come back to you. It's all
Yeah.
good. Shaun, what are you thinking? I know you got something bubbling on there. What do you got?
Yeah, it's so when my wife was trying to sneak up on me like a ninja assassin, I didn't see her. I didn't hear her. Like, I can't hear anything through my noise canceling headphones. But I felt coming up on my 6 o'clock, because I'm in the now, because I'm connected to the world around me. I have a 360 on the regular. I can feel, sounds weird, but I can feel outside of this hotel beyond that door. I can feel ill intent, but if it's good intent, the closer it gets, I can feel it. So I can feel good and bad, because that's how I try to run my life, because I'm connected to my real-time world. And I think that one of the issues that occurs is people have become disconnected because of this bad boy, because of the electronic device. In not as much in Australia, but in Malaysia and in Singapore predominantly, everyone is lost in their phone. Everyone is on the phone. They're barely aware of what's going on. They're certainly not aware of their six at all. What they have learned to do is stare at their phone. And I mean, like, I eyeball the world around me. It's not that I just feel it. And so I see what's going on people's phones as they're walking by, walking towards me. I'll glance with my peripheral, see what's up with them. And the majority of it is playing some kind of crazy little game, some like little feed the fish in the electronic aquarium game, something that has zero relevance to reality. It's an escapism that I see on the phone, but they become so good at it. They've become so good at escaping into their phone that their only radar that they have up is an autopilot to navigate down the sidewalk and move a little bit like a fish through the real world while they're watching their digital fish in their digital aquarium game. And so no one really bumps into each other. Nobody's tripping over, escalators or any of stairs or anything like that. They are so good at navigating with this digital world that they can survive in the real world, but they are so disconnected from what's going on around them. And so I think that one of the large issues is that if you're that disconnected from your actual world, how can you be connected to yourself? Because if your footprint starts has constrained itself so much that now all you know is this tiny little arc in front of you where you move down a sidewalk or through a subway station, if that's all you can do in that moment, well, how do you even connect to yourself on a more expansive level? And so I see the disconnect from the real world, which has people looking or future casting into the future with what holiday is coming up next that I can either start shopping for or looking forward to. Looking forward. They're not even looking forward. Their tiny little radar is looking forward, but I think it's just that next little digital fish, the next holiday is the digital fish that they are playing within their digital world. That's what I see happening.
I really think this carries on into a lot of other realms in terms of, the average person's life. And I mean, I was stuck in this too. And I don't mean like the average person is in somebody who isn't me, because I was in it 100% like a decade ago. When I first got out of the military and I was just trying to figure out how to do life and all that stuff, I dove into my phone. It was an easy place to separate the world that bothered me with something that I could enjoy. In this moment right now, I'm just going to play this game. And I didn't have to deal with everything else. I could put music on and disconnect from the world so I didn't have to have the noise. And there is this, I think the challenge is that we don't have anything to struggle together for. Right. And this is the thing that we see in the military that helps us when we're in the military is we're all struggling together. We all have one goal, and now it's given to us by core staff and all these other things. And I want to make it through this course, or I want to get to the next thing, or whatever. It's given to us. And we all struggle through it to get to the end. But the average person, or even veterans that get out, when we separate into the wind, we don't really have that given anymore. Now we got to kind of figure it out ourselves, and it's much easier just to dive into your phone, escape from the world for those 5 minutes at a time, and that can be a decade or 2 or 3 or your entire life. And I think we see this on a pretty regular basis. Sarah, I'm going to come to you. Got any thoughts on that?
First of all, we call that trauma bonding. No, but what I think that really boils down to, though, is that there's this overall lack of purpose, right? And the inability to sit with yourself, and for you to have any concept of what you believe, you have to, one, understand yourself. Because if you're not comfortable sitting in the silence of your own head, I think, will have a much higher propensity to accept whatever you are given without being able to discern if that is really what aligns with you as a human being.
Could not agree more. Steve, thoughts? He's taking notes.
Yeah, Sarah just fired me up. I'm going for the pad of paper. Yeah. I really, really want to hone in on that idea, what Sarah just said, of accepting what you're being given. I will never accept blindly what I am being given, because I feel like I just like, it's like I have a checklist that I just refer to, and it's called my life. And if something is being presented to me, I check it against the things I believe in, like my value system, my morals, my family, my health, my wellness, my emotional state. Like if something's coming at me, it's like a down the list. And if it's going to help me be better at being who I am and what I'm doing, I'm in. And I'm a rabbit hole dude. And that's where it's like, oh, I have so many thoughts. So for me, I love that idea of not just taking what's being given. Another layer I want to add to it is, and it's more of a question for the crew, like, do you feel like there is a thirst for belief though in the people that we interact with? Because I find the more I give to people in terms of having conversation around this, the more they're just wanting to hear it. And I'm not saying that like in an ego way. Like Shaun sat with a fella in a restaurant, he posted about it on his IG, and just had a conversation with a dude who was probably wanting to have that conversation for a long time. But because Shaun was there, rooted in belief, that opened a door for a person to have an important conversation for themselves. And I like, I'm a sensory dude, like Shaun, I'm a bit of a tuning fork. Like I feel the world. And I feel like there is a thirst for belief. Just that disconnection piece that we were chatting about, that is what's keeping people from engaging with it. But forcing moments, and not in a negative way, but hopefully in a positive, but creating moments or forcing moments of opportunity to start the conversation seems to be wanted. So I get excited about how we try and do that on a large scale, you know?
That's a great question set up. Shaun, I'm going to come to you. What do you think?
Well, I think that in order to feel things, it's work. And the opposite of work is not working, and not working is easy. In fact, it's so easy that you can dive into your goofy little phone game and disappear for the rest of your life, because it's easy, man. It's not work. I mean, you just got to plug in your phone every once in a while to make sure that you can keep playing your game. But other than that, there's no hard lifting. There's no heavy push. There's no velocity. You can exist in a moment of time that at one point ends, and that's called your life. And you never know what you did with your life because you were in your digital aquarium. And so it does take work to start feeling things. And I think that any veteran that I've ever met at some point in their life, for whatever reasons, whether it be mental health or TBI or the disconnect from the team, or now you're wandering in the world by yourself and you don't know how to do your banking, and you don't know how to do all of these things, and it's all just so much for you that you sit on your couch and you disappear into the game of the phone. I've never had games on my phone. I don't even know what games everyone's playing out there. I see a bunch of weird little games, but I don't know what they're called, because that was just never what I was interested in. And so it does take work to start creating belief, but not just belief in yourself, but belief in the world around you. It is a two-piece process, I believe. And so, Sarah had talked about having a higher purpose, or having a mission, having a goal for existence. And it can't just be for yourself and your phone. It's got to be for something else other than just yourself. And so I feel that it's like this. You have to learn how to feel, which takes a bit of work. And once you start feeling, then you can start focusing on the next phase, which is heal. And I'm not just talking about you. I'm talking about getting good enough at feeling the world around you that you can start healing others as well. Steve had said, a guy that I talked to in a restaurant, I'm doing it on the regular all the time. I mean, like in food lineups and all over the place. It doesn't matter. If someone gets my eye for 30 seconds and I feel something, I just want to talk to them and figure out how I can help them just a tiny, tiny bit. And in so doing, I'm getting better at being me. And so you have to feel in order to heal. There's probably another word I could throw in there that rhymes, but I'll not do it. But I think that those two things are super important, and they're kind of connected at the hip.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. Sarah, what are you thinking?
Yeah, I definitely agree. I think that I really do agree. I think there is this thirst for, belief or purpose. But I really like that point that Shaun just brought up, that there is this, if you really want to believe in something, you have to be able to feel it. You have to be able to feel, to connect, whether it is the environment, interpersonally, and in turn to heal, right? Because it's a platitude, but it's, what does it say? If you don't do the work to heal, you bleed on everyone that did not hurt you, right? And so just as much of a responsibility it is to spread that positive nature out there. If you are not managing and in control of your own self, what you perceive as healing and spreading that belief around could, also in turn be quite negative and harmful to the group. So there is that bit of self responsibility for accountability and that check. I think it was, I forget which guest you guys talked about, but it was the concept of having, a mirror or a group of people to be the sounding board to check you and essentially make sure you're on azimuth, right? Or if you've just gone off to left field into whatever, rabbit hole you thought about, but that becomes part of it. When you have a core foundation of beliefs, you start to surround yourself with, yes, people that are like-minded, but also people that will give you the honest feedback to make sure that what you're doing is grounded and not something that is just wild.
I think you're on to something there, but I'm going to push back a little bit too, is that I think a lot of people, once they find something that they believe in and they start to surround themselves with people that also believe in that, they do not want people to question that belief. They do not want other people to say, whoa, man, that's a little weird. What they want is that consistent, continual, like, oh, yeah, everyone's nodding. Oh, yeah, okay, well, now we're going down here. And that turns into a cult very fast, right? Like, you can, and it can very quickly devolve into something very negative, like something that you think can be good in the time, but not being fully prepared to handle it can affect people negatively, like you said. And we've talked about the, proxying your own wellness to other people, which is one of the things that I did when I first got out and I started trying to do advocacy and trying to help everybody else. And it was just an easy way to not deal with me because I could deal with other people and I could give advice without actually having to do it. So it's a slippery slope. But Steve, I see you taking notes there. What do you got?
Well, you basically explained 98% of the teachers that are my colleagues that I've worked with over 20 years. It's like, if we can help others, then we don't have to help ourselves, right? And that's where it's really interesting when you start to actually take a stand for yourself and you start creating healthy boundaries for yourself, and you start surrounding yourself with not just the narrative confirmers, right? Like I got big love for a lot of folks in my building, but I've got some serious angst towards some that I don't. And what I've been forcing myself to do more recently as part of a discipline practice is just to interact with those people that I don't vibe with. Because how can I create an opportunity to have them become a part of something that I so deeply believe in if I've got my judgment walls up? And I've actually started including in my language in conversations with people, like, I might say something that you don't agree with, but that's okay. And I want you to let me know if you don't agree with it. And especially with folks that I'm a bit bristly with, because if we can have that groundwork laid where, yes, we're going to have a conversation, it might not be where we want it to go, but in the middle of that, there's going to be something that's tangible, that's usable for both parties. Like, I feel like judgment is one of those things, and we've spoken about it before, but if you want to create this idea of a collective belief so that you're not just surrounding yourself or being in an echo chamber where all of a sudden by proxy, you're giving away your beliefs. I think that it's important to start including people that don't confirm your beliefs, but in like a respectful, non-judgmental way.
I like that a lot. Shaun, thoughts?
Maybe another way to discuss believe and belief is through a timeline. And so let's call believe a 24-hour cycle. And belief is beyond the 24-hour cycle. And more correctly, I actually feel that belief is, several months down the road, maybe a decade down the road, could act as the belief proxy. And so I believe that when I woke up this morning, my wife was going to smash out the Singapore Marathon, and then we're going to hustle back to our hotel, get our act together, go eat some good food, hustle back here, have a smashingly awesome conversation with the rad guests on the panel, and that we would do good for the world. And then I would repeat that cycle to some degree. Believe, 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 believe on a 24-hour cycle basis. Belief is the outcome of the believe. So I believe that we're doing good. And I believe that if we continue on with this kind of discussion with these kind of guests on a larger and larger scale, because remember, again, one of the reasons the collective started off was to scale up the one-on-one conversations, where if I feel something, I'm trying to help someone, and it's one-on-one, and oh yeah, 20 years from now, I'm dead and I've helped how many people? Chance has probably got another 20 years beyond when I die, because he's a young buck. So how many people is he going to help? How many people is Steve? How many are we all going to help one-on-one? Not enough, in my opinion, based on how many years I've done this one-on-one as a professional coach and as all of the things. It's not enough for the problems that I saw out there. Literally, one of the reasons this kicked off is because friends were saying, bro, you got to do this. Have you seen the mental health crisis out there? Bro, you've got to do this. Have you seen the suicide statistics out there? What about this? What about that? How's it going to get fixed if people don't get in front of microphones and start getting after it? So if I was to do it one-on-one, it would not even make a dent in the things that I was being asked to try and be helpful in. So it has to scale up. So my belief is 24-hour iteration after 24-hour iteration, it will start to scale up. And through that process, people will start to retroactively look back at what we've accomplished over this year and cast forward into the future as sort of a generalized pattern, and see that the belief is that this thing is going to help a boatload of people year after year as it scales up, not maybe even linear, but perhaps exponential. We'll see how it all plays out. But at the grassroots of it, at the baseline level of it, at the core of it, you've got to do your 24-hour cycle iteration consistently and start building your own believe in yourself, believe in the process of the day. And through that, you can then start to understand the beliefs of the future.
It's very interesting. This whole conversation keeps bringing up this movie from a while ago, and I'm blanking on the title of it. It's based off of a TV show, but it doesn't really matter. The whole concept around it is the main character is talking about you need to believe in what you're doing 100% of the time. Like, doesn't matter if it's going well, you need to believe in it. If it's going poorly, you still need to believe in it. If it's going kind of mediocrely, you still need to believe in it in order to achieve any of the things that you want to do, more so than the next person. And I think that the concept of belief has a very religious connotation, I think, for a lot of people, versus just the core tenet of actually, I can't think of a better word for it, but buying into it, buying into an idea, and then acting upon it. And I think that that biggest challenge, that biggest hurdle, that first thing to get over is ourselves. So I got to ask, do you think that, is there anything that we can put out to the world there, the people that are listening, the people that are going to watch this later on, to actively believe that they are capable of grand things? Sarah, I'm going to come to you first. What do you think?
I would say that it's to understand that believing is hard, and what you just explained is, you have to believe in it, because if you don't believe in it, you will quit. Right. And when things are hard, it's exhausting. You have to dig in and you have to find that grit within yourself and root into the why of what you think is the outcome. Like, why do I believe in this? Because if you don't believe, you'll just stop, right? And I think the biggest thing for people to take away is to know that if it's hard, keep going, right? If you really believe in it, just keep going, one foot in front of the other, stay in the present, left and right. Don't get so consumed in the macro picture. Believe in yourself in the moment and push through when it's hard. Don't stop.
I like that. Steve, thoughts?
Yeah, it's some is better than none. And so a friend of mine, Louise, who I only see every once in a while, she's a road pirate. She's out there. She kind of lives her life by this motto of just show up. And I really believe that just showing up is a really big part of the puzzle, because if you just show up, like how many things has just this panel alone, how many things have we maybe thought, ugh, not today, but you just show up. And if you can't produce the best of you on that day, then some is always better than none. I mean, I'm jacked up right now a little bit physically, but see, I have this cool responsibility that I've created for myself professionally, where when those kids walk through the door and we're about to train, I mean, I live by this. Like, I will never ask them to do what I won't do myself. And I think a lot of us probably live similarly to that. And so I'll be honest and be like, kiddos, like, today's not the best day that I'm bringing to the table, but guess what? I'm here and we're going to get this done, because some is always better than none. And so for our listeners, those who are struggling with these ideas about what they believe in or how to get started, just show up and know that some is better than none.
I like that. Shaun, thoughts on this?
Well, it wasn't a thought until you raised the unknown TV show with the unknown actor that was doing unknown things, but it was enough to trigger a little idea in my head. And it's this, that you name any TV show out there that only has one character in it, other than a weird live chat podcast where a dude just talks to people that are on the other side of the internet that he doesn't know. I mean, I guess that's a show. But TV shows, generally speaking, have a bunch of actors in it. They have a bunch of either supporting characters or other lead characters. Maybe there's some villains. Maybe there's all the protagonists, antagonists, and all of that good stuff. Well, I wanted to quit this whole thing more than a couple of times. I almost did. But there was some supporting characters in this show that said, bro, you know how this whole thing works. Don't, because it's going to play out the way it's supposed to play out. And I just needed to hear that from time to time. I probably only needed to hear it about 4 times over this almost entire year. And so from the right person at the right time, when you're getting close to thinking about, screw this, I'm out of here. It was easier drinking coffee and riding my bike. When the right person says it, and they've got to be tuned into it. They've got to like almost feel that you're getting close to pulling the pin. When the right person says it, then it gets you recalibrated, and then you're back in the game. And I'm saying this from a guy who should know better. I know the process. I know the process for me. This is my 8th process. This is my 8th career. I've gone through this a number of times. I know how it works for Shaun. But even knowing how it works for me through those other iterations, I still thought, man, this is not going to work out. I just don't feel it. I just don't want it anymore. It's too hard. It's too blah, blah, blah. All of the stupid stuff that goes in my imposter syndrome head. But I just needed a little tweak. One of the tweaks was from my wife. You know, she said not too long ago, you know, you guys are doing pretty good. You're doing good things. Keep on keeping on. And I thought, what? My wife actually has heard some of these podcasts. But I think that it's important that from time to time, not that we have to reach out to someone and shake common sense into them, or reach out and put our hands on their shoulder and say, I got you, because this is what I see. Just keep on keeping on, bro. It doesn't have to be anything like substantial. It doesn't have to be woo-woo. It doesn't have to be anything other than the right person at the right time saying the right thing in 15 seconds or less, and bam, you're right back on track again on the process that you already know how to do. Even the strongest processors from time to time need to be reminded that the process works, that the process is strong, that the process will create the outcome that you believe is occurring, with the belief that it's going to be good for the greater world around us. So I don't want to make believe and belief all about us. I want to ensure that everyone understands that in this TV show that Chance still can't recall the name of, that there are other, okay, well, I hope it's an awesome spy one. I hope that everyone understands that we all need supporting characters in our life, and supporting doesn't mean they defer to us as in deferential, or they're subordinated as in I'm the lead actor and you're all bit players. It isn't about that. We do need support from time to time. Certain people need it at certain times. Some need it more than others. I need it very little. When I'm starting to think like, I'm out of here, that's the time that I hope someone will just like give me that little bit of extra nudge that I need so that I can keep on smashing. So no one is immune to it, as I see it. Coming from a guy who should know better, there's times when I start to lose my way a little bit, and I need just that little bit of nudge.
Yeah, I like that. The show I was talking, the movie's called Serenity. It's based off of the movie the TV show Firefly, which is a great little. I know. Yeah, I can see Sarah. She's geeking out right now. She's like, yes. Anyway, it's a great point. I'm thinking what you're talking about, like guardrails, right? When you start going way off to the side, there's those little guardrails. Some people, those guardrails are tight. Some people, you got lots of bandwidth. But at least that's where I'm coming from. Sarah, you got any thoughts on what Shaun just said?
Yeah, I like that you brought up that we're not in it alone, right? So we may walk our path differently for different lengths of time, but at the end of the day, some people come in just at the right time and they stay for a little time or they stay for a long time. But I think a lot of people quit and struggle with belief because they do think they are alone.
I think that is accurate for sure. Steve, thoughts on this?
Yeah, I strongly agree with what Sarah just said. I feel like folks increasingly have become so fearful of the judgment of others about whatever their struggles may be, or about whatever their beliefs may be, or their passion or their direction or whatever it is. They're so worried about what the judgment could be that they literally, not only do they not reach out, they withdraw. They actually isolate and find that form of escape that feeds that narrative for them. Like every once in a while, we have a group chat with a bunch of my mountain bike homies that I only see, once a year at camp. And I just do a homie check. It's literally called a homie check. Like, everybody good? If you're not, you know where I am. I'm here to listen. Trust everything's okay. And I do that once a month, basically. I'll send out a homie check to the crew just to make sure, because in that group of dudes that I know, and dudettes, like, this type of conversation, it would not be typical for that group. So as a soft entry point for them, I just call it a homie check. And I have two guys that on the semi-regular respond and will engage in a conversation. And that, that's 2 out of like 10 in the group chat. But that's 2 more than it was like a year ago. And then, maybe they do a homie check for somebody they know. And then that builds that supporting cast like Shaun was talking about, that you don't have to worry about the judgment. I do have a little bit of worry for folks that are feeling that fear of judgment. Just take a chance. There's the world's hectic and it's a bit gnarly right now, but there are some good folks out there, and you just have to let yourself feel that a little bit.
Yeah, I agree. Shaun, any additional thoughts on this?
Well, just that, why reach out? Why do any of it? It all comes back to that why, right? Otherwise, we'd all just be kicking it back in our little electronic aquariums, playing our goofy little games forever and a day until we die. There's got to be a why, because without that why, nothing and I mean exclamation mark nothing, will occur. Because without the why, it's la la land. And so you need to figure out your why. And then you need to start moving towards it, whatever it is. And along the way, you'll lose your way. And as you start to lose your way, you either reach out to someone and say, wow, I'm struggling, or someone's tuned in enough to you that they'll say, hey man, how you making out? What's up? Want to go for lunch? Whatever the case. But life is not a solo journey. It's two-way highway, depending on who you're talking with and who you're connected to. But all the highways don't exist until you step into the car called why.
That is a great point. I mean, we as humans are gregarious species, and there are the outliers, like Shaun, who likes his solitude and has no problem kind of being on his own. But we are gregarious by nature, and we do want to surround ourselves with other people or other animals or other things in order to maintain that social network. And one of the benefits that not only the collective has done, but podcasting and doing advocacy for myself, is that the network is friggin' expansive. And now for myself, my why being to facilitate, I'm able to use it. I'm able to utilize that belief in what I'm doing to expand the network, to pass on information. So when I do call somebody and say, hey man, how you doing? Haven't heard from you in a while. And he's like, I'm not doing great. I'm like, hey, we're not in the same area of Canada right now, but I have a buddy of mine who's just down the street. Why don't you guys link up and have coffee? And I can facilitate that meetup. I can facilitate that introduction, or I can engage that through belief in what it is I'm doing. And I think that stems to what we're talking about. Are there any other thoughts? I got a couple comments here I want to touch on, but any other thoughts on that before we move on? Shaun, what do you got?
I just have to clarify the point that you made about, yeah, I'm comfortable in my own skin, man. If I never interact with anyone else other than my immediate family, cool. I'm good with that. It's no big deal. Like, I really am okay with being by myself and my family. However, you don't have to be one thing or the other. You can blur back and forth as you play your game, whatever your game is. And I don't mean like a dumb game. I'm talking about the game of life. And so I'm happy when I'm happy. And you need to know what your happiness is. You need to figure out what you enjoy within you and outside of you. And if you can figure that out, well, good. But how do I get involved with the collective? How do I end up talking to a bunch of people? How do I, all of these things, why do I do it? It's because I understand that I'm helping feel and heal. I understand that the things that I do now externally out into the digital world, out into the collective podosphere, it's good for people. It's good for me, but it's good for people at a scale that is only going to grow. And so that is what encourages me to do this, because I know it's good for all of us to some degree. If it wasn't good for all of us, if I wasn't telling myself that it was good, if I didn't believe that it was good, I'd be drinking coffee and riding my bike and not really caring about any of this nonsense. But I know it's not nonsense because it's creating goodness. I hope that makes sense.
100%. Sarah, you got any additional thoughts on this? No? Steve? Good? Okay. So a couple comments here. Salty jumps in here, says, belief comes like faith. You know it, but don't see it. Believe is in the moment as you commit to the action as it develops. I really like that. He's got a couple here, so I'm going to punch through these. He says, do one thing you have problems doing until you don't suck at it. Just one simple, not easy thing. Keep showing up and keep moving forward with it every day. This is a great quote. I say something similar to my kids all the time, is that everything is hard until you do it enough times that it gets easy. And it's so far it's been true in my life. Salty continues with this. Just showing up can be a one-day thing. If you keep showing up, you can be that 1% that gets better, 100%. Lisa says, this all resonates. I'm excited to be here listening to you all talk and share. Salty says, I aim to misbehave. See, he's in it. He knows what I'm talking about. Anybody that's a geek that's seen that show knows that that's from it. Anyway, Lisa says, that happened to me this morning, and someone who follows me said to keep doing what you're doing. And that is fantastic. This is how the network, this is how the collective, I think, works to its utmost, is when we all not only keep each other accountable, but keep each other, I'm going to use the term motivated, but moving forward in their own beliefs, I should say. Now we're going to be getting close to the end of time here, but I have one more final question on this, and it's based off of a kind of a pithy statement. I think we have a whole bunch of those that we've gone through in the annals of the collective so far, but nothing worth doing is easy, is the quote that kind of pops into my head for what we're talking about. And I'm wondering, do you think that that is 100% accurate, or do you think that it needs some tweaking? Steve, I'm going to come to you. What do you think?
I've lived with a similar version of that, and it's that anything worth doing is hard. And it's similar, but I feel like the idea of worth is worth kicking around. It's worth exploring a little bit, because that's where people will root themselves, because then it feeds their why. Like Shaun's been emphatic and passionate about the idea of why, which I love, because I can tell you all sorts of my whys. That's what keeps me moving forward. But the idea of worth and self-worth in particular, that really does feed belief. And if somebody can do something hard because it feels like it's worth it to them, and it picks them up, it fills their bucket just a little bit at a time, then they will seek out more hard things, and they will continue to fill and create worth. And then next thing you know, boy, oh boy, they got something to ride or die on. And that's all of it for me.
I like it. Sarah, any thoughts on this?
So I actually really don't like that statement, because I think it preemptively assigns more value to things that are deemed to be challenging. And that's not always the case. Sometimes what you decided is the most valuable to you as a person does come quite easy, and that doesn't diminish that effort. But sometimes, yes, things are hard, and you've assigned a high value to them, and it's worth pursuing and digging in and pushing through that ceiling to get to the end goal. But I don't inherently like the universal comment of anything worth doing is not easy.
Oh, I like that. Shaun, thoughts on this?
Yeah, I think Sarah is right on the money, and so is Steve, because I fluctuate from one to the other. Anything of free has no value. Anything worth doing should be hard. All of these various pithy statements, I ebb and flow from moment to moment based on my vibe, based on what I feel. For me, it's what I feel. Yesterday, the other day, was in the hawker food stalls just across the street. Met a guy called James. He gave me 2 patches, 9th Infantry Division and an advanced infantry badge from the Singapore military. I didn't know he was going to show up with patches. He didn't have to do that. We hung out for 2 hours, and that would have been cool as cool could be as far as I was concerned. But he gifted those to me, and that brought him joy, and it brought me joy. They were free to some degree, but they represented a number of things that had cost. And so how do you put value on these intangibles? History and experience and connections and commonality and all of these various things. Does free have no value, or is free valuable? I think for me, the only way I can answer it is it depends on the vibe, on the moment, on who's in front of me, the world around me, how I feel inside, how I feel externally, the purpose for it, the purpose in the future, what I believe now, what the belief is for till I die. All of these things come into play. So it is a complex interplay, a complex bowl of soup that we should all be stirring on the regular to make sure that all of the spices and herbs and ingredients are perfectly synchronized, so that that soup spoon is delicious rather than flat and one-dimensional. You have to be present. You have to stir up your life with free and costly things in order to contextualize what is really of value to you, not to anyone else on this panel, because we're not competing. We're not saying my way is the highway and your way sucks. I mean, it's about who we are right now that may be different tomorrow for other people who are listening to this. If they think about some of the things the guest panel said today, their world might be different tomorrow. Their soup may taste different tomorrow.
Adding a little spice to everyone's soup in the evening here in Canada and the US. I like it. So I got one more comment here, and then we'll get some final thoughts. Been a fantastic conversation so far. Salty jumps in here and says, the belief in the collective inspires and develops the ability of the individual to believe based on the examples set by all those involved, which I think is 100% accurate. He said, you're all leaders in this. It's part of what we're trying to do. Now, let's get some final thoughts on anything we've talked about so far. It's been a big conversation. We've hit this from a lot of different ways, and I think we might just have to carry it on into tomorrow because there is so much depth in this conversation. I've really, really been enjoying this. Sarah, any final thoughts? Anything still bubbling in the back of the brain there?
Yeah, so this might seem kind of funny, but I think almost every podcast, right? This is like a quintessential Shaun thing. It depends, and it depends on my vibe that day, right? And to tie that into the soup analogy, what I think is so important in the belief in the importance of this podcast and the positive change that it'll make is, right, if you let soup stagnate in a pot, the bottom will burn, right? Depending on the ingredients, then you've ruined your whole meal, your whole experience. But it really depends, right? Maybe it's a dish that needs to simmer, and then you do let it sit in the pot. And I love that comment that none of us are right and none of us are competing, right? We're all in this to grow and make it better. So take these little pieces and help that to sit with yourself and guide your way forward, right?
Love it. Steve, final thoughts?
Man, I love soup. I really do. And I think what Sarah said there brings something really valuable to the table, and that is like all soups are generally made from a recipe, right? And they're made from, grandma's recipe card that's been handed down, or a buddy passes you a recipe that they tried that worked out really well. And that, I think, ties together this idea of like having people around you that are on a healthy path that you can connect with, that are willing to say, here's how I made the soup. Try your own version. And, ask your grandma if she would add anything to this recipe. It's like surround yourself with the right people who have made enough soup that you're gonna be in the best position you can be not to burn the soup, because you're following the kind of steps that have been laid out by others around you that are vibing on the same path. So make the soup, folks. And I'm sure grateful and glad that we got a chance to have this conversation. You agreed to take this on, because boy, oh boy, it's been percolating with me for a little bit. So I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Anytime. Shaun, final thoughts on this?
Well, as we try to say on a fairly regular basis, I think one of the ways that we try to serve the larger community around us is we move beyond the veneer of the topic. We dive into the meat and potatoes of the subject. The veneer would be the top of the soup that didn't have the right heat or hadn't been stirred enough. It gets that skim, it gets that skin across the top of the soup where it's been sitting there too long and it's not looking that palatable. We try to get below that into the surface of the soup, onto the meat and potatoes of it. But if the collective is the meat and potatoes of the subject, what I would see as part of this example is everybody who sits down at the table isn't there to taste somebody's recipe. They're all bringing their own herbs and spices from their own garden of life. They just show up and that gets thrown into the soup. And every day the soup is just a little bit different, a little bit richer, a little tastier. And so Sarah brought something, Steve brought something, Chance brought something, I brought something. Every day this soup gets better as far as I'm concerned. And once the soup has been stirred up and cooked up enough and infused enough of the wisdom of the group, then it gets served to everybody. We all communally sit at the dinner table and enjoy this day's bounty.
Yeah. I'm reminded of a quote I heard a long time ago, and I couldn't tell you where I got it from, but it was that cooking, when you first start to cook, it is a science. You follow the instructions, you do exactly what you are meant to do, and you will get out what you're supposed to get out. But you do that enough, and it becomes an art form. And then you start adding things that you want, and you start experimenting with things. You start trying things, and not everything works. But eventually you develop an ability to feel the food. You get to feel how the soup is sitting. You get to experience more than just the addition of ingredients and time. You get to actually create something. And I think that's what we get to do here on the collective. I think we get to do it every day as we all continually learn, as we all continually build, and we all continually grow. And you can do that with us every day here on the collective. We'll see y'all tomorrow. Chimo.
Chimo.